Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Teeth Matter. I'm your host, Ellie Halabian, DDS, and I've got to take a second to thank everyone who follows the podcast, whether that's on Spotify, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram. Our community is growing, and as it's growing, I've come to realize that there are so many people involved in the logistics of providing dental care. It's not just the dentist and the patient relationship. It's the dental hygienist, it's the dental assistant, it's the office manager, it's the business owner. There are so many people involved in providing day-to-day care that we need to start taking in their perspective, because they can provide an objective view on how we are acting, on how we are reacting as clinicians and as team leaders. And I did that a couple weeks ago, where I started to take that new direction by bringing in business owner Kirk Teachout. He owns a practice. He's not an active clinician. And he gave us a very pragmatic view about how to maximize profits. You do that by creating systemized schedules that are efficient, that are repeatable, that are reproducible, and as a result, they're profitable. So that was one perspective. Today, we're bringing in our first ever dental hygienist, Loren King. Loren is a seasoned hygienist. She's traveled all across America, provided care in several different cities, in several different types of environments. So she has stories for days. The beautiful thing is, Loren can give us insight into why the dentist and dental hygienist relationship is so important. Does she think it's undervalued? Why is it undervalued? And why is there a shortage of dental hygienists across the U.S. at the moment? So this conversation is very different to what we've had before, but I think you'll enjoy it just as much. Let's dive in. Before we dive in, did you know that we're getting ready to launch Teeth Matter Hangouts? It's an exclusive online membership community that gives you access to monthly meetups, 24/7 online support, plus exclusive membership perks when it comes to career development and professional development courses. So if you're interested, feel free to DM us on Instagram or email us at info@teethmatterpod, as in podcast.com. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Loren King, thanks so much for being on Teeth Matter.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so happy to have you on. This is going to be a really exciting conversation. You know, you're the first dental hygienist to be on the podcast.
Oh, this is gonna be fun. I'm excited.
This is
Gonna be
amazing.
fun.
Me too. And I'm really happy to have you on, because I was telling you earlier, I feel like dental hygienist working so closely with the dentist, you're our mirror. And so as someone who's watching us in the environment, you can provide us feedback on how we perform as leaders, how we perform as clinicians, and help us improve ourselves and, improve that relationship together. So
Yeah.
before we dive into all of that discussion, I just want to, have you introduce yourself a little bit. Maybe tell us about what motivated you to become a dental hygienist. What has your experience been like? Just a little tidbit on you.
So I've been in the dental industry for, 12 years now, and I was actually an assistant first. So I did general dentistry for about a year. To be honest with you, I hated it. I thought it was boring. Uh, and then I went straight into surgery. So I was a surgical assistant for about 4 years for oral surgery, and then also for perio surgery. And I loved it. I wouldn't have left it had I not wanted more autonomy and the ability to see and treat my own patients, but also, being single and not having like a second, counterpart financially, I needed more financial stability as well. So I went back and went to school and became a hygienist, and it's been almost 7 years now. So long time. And I'm now licensed. I just moved to Miami. I'm now licensed in 8 states as a hygienist. So I think if anyone can kind of speak on this, I can tell you my perspective from 8 different states and probably over 500 offices in my career. So I've only been a travel hygienist my entire career. So I think, if not every day, every other day, I'm in a different office when I'm not speaking or teaching. I am a international speaker for human trafficking awareness in the dental industry, starting to branch out into the airlines and some of the other professional capacities like the hospitals for that subject. And then I'm also speaking on airway and the importance of screening and education, and just like this, the collaboration between, the hygienist and the dentist, and how the hygienist can screen and the dentist can screen. So I think this is going to be a fun conversation all around, just because of the diverse background, but also, knowing how important it is for us to support each other more so than us being a separate unit, which is how a lot of the teams work that I've seen in my 7 years of practicing as a hygienist. It's very much divided most of the time.
And I completely agree, and that's why I asked you to come on. It's because I want to have this conversation and bridge that gap. Essentially, you mentioned like you've been a traveling hygienist. You clearly have a lot of knowledge. You've worked with a lot of different types of people, a lot of different types of offices. So my question to you, or my first question to you, is what qualities do you think make a great dentist, and how does that affect not only the patient experience but also the team dynamic or the team function?
I don't think dentists get enough credit. I really don't. From being an assistant and then going into hygiene, I feel like dentists get a bad rep. And I think it's just because people don't really understand them unless they're a dentist. Or, all they think is, okay, doc's trying to buy a new bins, so now we all have to do this new implementation. I've already got enough in one appointment. Like, no, guys, they're business owners and nobody taught them how to be a business owner. Like, they're dying. And of course, there's bad apples everywhere in every profession and in every position. It's just human nature. But I think that a lot of times, for a dentist especially, one of the really key important things, in my opinion, as a hygienist, is just being able to, one, accept the autonomy from your hygienist and being able to work more with them as a team and see them as a provider versus just seeing them as another team member. And yes, it's a unit and everyone works together, but at the end of the day, the hygienist does have a degree, and the hygienist did pay a lot of money and go to school for a long time for that degree. And I think one of the biggest things between the relationship of the two is trust. If you don't have trust, if you don't trust your hygienist, they shouldn't be working for you, in my opinion. It's one, it's not going to go well, but also it's going to show at the office. It's going to show with the patients. It's going to show with the team. You're going to be going back and forth with each other all the time versus, okay, this is our standard baseline care, our highest standard of care, but what we consider our baseline, no matter what, this is what we're going to follow. I trust you and we're in agreement to this. And everything just goes so much smoother. But for dentists specifically, I think just standing in that and being more open to other providers in the office besides themselves, it may not be a dentist and may be a hygienist, treating them like a provider, treating them more like how they treat associates. And there's sometimes where I feel like hygienists outproduce associates, and some of them are not getting paid production, but they're outproducing someone with DDS behind their name. And it's like, is that good or bad? No, I just think it needs to be acknowledged. So I think the other key aspect of it is giving credit where it's due for a dentist. But all around, I mean, to be honest, I just think it's really hard. I think that you guys get a bad rap. I think that you guys have a lot on your shoulders. No one teaches you business. So you're basically thrown out to the sharks and you have no idea what you're doing. You're told that you need to be asking X, Y, and Z as an associate, or hey, let's go buy and sell to a DSO and all of these things. And I feel for you guys. I do. As a hygienist, I see it, and I've seen a lot of it, even friends of mine. But I think for you, the biggest thing would just to have autonomy with your team, also let them grow, but be open to them coming to you and asking for that respect or asking for that autonomy.
You mentioned a few things that I want to touch on. You said we get a bad rep. What are some examples of things that you have heard people say about dentists, or like, why do you think we get a bad rep? Where does that like thought come from, or where is it rooted in?
I think it's rooted in lack of patient education and, to be honest, just the world education in terms of dentistry. At some point in time, we separated the mouth from the rest of the body, and it became something that wasn't important to the rest of our health. You know, the oral systemic link or total body health, it always excludes the mouth. And I feel like as clinicians, when we're going into an appointment with a patient that has that mentality due to lack of education, I mean, where are they going to learn that this is a problem? And your oral health is just as important as your heart health, or any other organ or any other body part. So if you're going into that as a dentist and they're already, pushing up against you or thinking, okay, doc's just trying to sell me something else or something like that, I think that's primarily where it comes from. And then it stems into, universities of people teaching these programs and things like that. It's like, I feel like from the jump, at least in my experience, we're taught to be against each other. We're taught to see, what we're there to treat, and that's it. And I think that it's hurting us so much more than it's helping us if we would just all come together and work together. But unfortunately, if it's not being taught, where are you supposed to learn it unless you're having conversations like these that are very open and candid and trying to break those barriers. But that's literally what it is a barrier, lack of education, lack of patient education, and then word of mouth of both.
I completely agree with you. You mentioned also like hygiene or hygienist being more productive than the associate. That's very true. I remember I was once shadowing a dentist who said, this office runs on hygiene. Hygiene is what brings patients in, and it's very essential to the success of the practice and the success of the team. What does that kind of environment look like? How do you find an office where they really emphasize the importance of hygiene? And I guess you are the first level of patient education, right? Because you see the patient first and you take care of their cleaning, and you have this conversation where you kind of ease them into that space. So how do you what kind I guess I'm asking, what does that environment look like, and how can you find that type of practice?
The first time I found it, I'll be honest with you, was with a DSO. So my
Mm.
first job out of hygiene school it wasn't a DSO, it was right before, but it's important because I learned so much from this one experience. It was basically like drinking water through a fire hose as my first job, because it was an emergency clinic that was open 7 days a week from 7 to 7. And I think there was probably 20 providers in the building at any given time, including hygienists, so dentist and hygienist. And my job was to basically go in, numb, and triage as a hygienist, because this was in the South in Tennessee. And due to lack of patient education, they don't know how to take care of themselves. But me, I'm from Memphis, and I know what growing up in a more like poverty area is. You're trying to keep your lights on. You're not worried about your teeth unless there's a problem, right? Like, you're making so much less to begin with, but then the areas, it's just kind of one of those places that keeps you stuck there. So these patients are coming in and they're just in so much pain they can barely talk to you. So my job was, first question was, are you in pain? Yes or no? If the answer was yes, I was to get them numb. That way they could tell us what was wrong. But that was the first experience, I would say, with having a lot of autonomy and a lot of respect as a provider, and trust in terms of, I trust you enough to send you out to triage these patients and make sure that they're out of pain, and come tell me where and what I need to do. So that being my first experience, and then trying to go into anything outside of that where that wasn't happening, was tough, because I was so used to having that trust, right? And being able to be a provider and advocate for my patients and take care of them. My next job was with a really big DSO. And this DSO, I think the way that they do things and the way they invest in their hygienist is what everyone should do. This DSO sends you to a training at their headquarters for 5 days straight. After you've been there for a couple of months, they want to make sure you're at least going to stay, or stay enough for them to invest in you. But in those 5 days, we're taught how to talk to patients, what words not to say when we're trying to present treatment or what the patient needs, creating urgency, how to break the barrier of a financial barrier. Is it that you don't understand, like as in I didn't create enough urgency as to why you have active disease and infection in your mouth? Or is it you quite literally just cannot afford it? Like you can't get approved for care credit, or you can't get approved, or you don't have anybody to go ask money for. They teach you those things. But also, another thing that they did really well was the support. So each hygienist had an assistant. Usually it was a brand new, like fresh out of high school, wanting to be in healthcare type of person that they would hire, usually minimum wage, that's just elated to be working in healthcare in some capacity, right? And they want to learn. So they really learned the psych behind finding someone that is good to support the hygienist. But, you know, the thing that I feel like with DSOs that get a bad rap, and there, of course, are bad apples just like everything else, like I said earlier, they think that if you're working for a DSO, it's all production. They're going to expect you to sell. And I think that is a very backwards and wrong use of words sentence, because what they're expecting you to do is take care of the patient. And if you take care of the patient, then the production follows. If you don't have the tools to do that, you can't take care of your patient. Another big thing I learned with DSOs is if the hygienist needs something or if there's new technology, they get it for them. Now, are they going to be expected to show via production that that was a good investment or a good decision? Yeah, of course. They have to run a business at the end of the day. But I think the biggest thing that I learned in those two scenarios was trust, autonomy, and investing in the hygienist and supporting them, right? It's like you have those four things, and the hygienist is just going to really want to come in and do their job. What it looks like I used to be a hygiene mentor and a hygiene coach for certain companies. I would literally go in and teach hygienists how to have hard conversations, how to make sure urgency was created. What do you need that you feel you're not getting? Those types of things. And I used to call them roller coaster numbers. So you would see the offices that didn't have the support. It was like, just very toxic drama type of office, or they weren't staying up on their supplies, or they just didn't have good systems. And you would see the hygienists and their numbers would be like this. Some days they were choosing to come in and just go at it and take care of the patient, do whatever they could. They wanted to hit their numbers. And then other days you would see them come in and the numbers were just plummeted. It's like, what is going on here? And then you start looking around at the environment and you're like, I would probably pick and choose when I want to do my job too, if this is what I was dealing with, right? It's like, not every day are you going to have the motivation to come in and do your job if it's chaos.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned the pros of the DSO. Honestly, when you mentioned DSO, my initial thought was like, oh, they're all about volume. So how can you find the time to provide the patient education, but also I guess, find the confidence in the work that you do. But it seems like they not only give you um, the ability to play with technology, but also to, like you said, develop autonomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how does a DSO, maybe, I guess if that's the environment that you think was probably best for once you graduated hygiene school, how do you think they deal with, I guess, fostering the relationship between dentists and hygienists? Is there any emphasis on that? Because I feel like that relationship is very much undervalued everywhere else, like we discussed earlier.
I think it depends on the DSO, of course. I've worked for four of them over 12 years. Some were just in temp capacity, some I was actually with the DSO. All of them were very different in how they operate, what they invest in, and the culture. So one of my really, really good friends, his bread and butter is to go into offices and teach them like business love languages, how to talk to each other, how to be cohesive. Because when humans are happy, they work very well. So
Right.
it's like, but it's just like, in relationships, if I'm dating someone and we're basically speaking two different languages, we're probably not going to last very long unless we have a whole bunch of other things in common, right? Be like, listen,
Right.
you're great, but you need to go be great with somebody else. So, it's like I think in business we don't think about that aspect. So, it's the way that these DSOs invest in the team culture, I think is a really huge difference that a lot of private practices either don't have the time and budget for, or they just don't care, to be honest. I mean, that's just me being honest.
Right.
With these DSOs,
Yeah.
they're sending emails every day like, hey, today is World Donut Day or whatever the heck, or,
Right.
like we're we're having a spirit week, or, like we're all going to go play go-karts or what. I don't think you drive go-karts, you don't play them. But, we're going to go do things together. And it's constant, right? So
Right.
but on top of that, I feel like they have more support in terms of if there is a problem, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're firing you. It may mean we need to put you in a different office with a different culture. Just because you don't work in an office doesn't mean you're a terrible hygienist or a terrible dentist. And for whatever reason, our profession loves to go straight to that answer. They're just a terrible hygienist. Well, I mean, were they motivated when they came in? Did you guys speak the same business love languages? Did they feel appreciated? Did they want to raise and instead you were buying them a Starbucks gift card? Like, yeah, they're going to underperform because they're not happy as a human being. So, I think another thing or another credit I would give them is their culture and their support that they do to make sure that that is happening. But unfortunately, not every private practice has the budget or the time or the support to do that. That's an extra role, right? It's like an HR role or a director role or something like that. So I guess then it opens up the conversation of, okay, should every private practice sell to a DSO? That's a huge conversation right now that's going around in our industry. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
not necessarily, but I think that maybe there's a point in time where it's time to have that conversation.
Yeah, no, like you said, it seems like private practices are strapped for resources when it comes to investing in their employees.
Yeah.
Obviously, culture is really important, and that really depends on the team leader or the business owner. But I want to kind of know, when you look at um, the relationship between hygienist and dentist, what are some things that dentists are doing that maybe isn't real, that they commonly do, and maybe they don't even realize it, it's subconscious, that is kind of hindering the dynamic between the dentist and the hygienist?
I think there's a few things, and I think it depends on if you're temping or not. I have been asked to leave offices before because I was advocating for the patient. So I walk into an office, the first half of the day, it's prophy, prophy, prophy. Everyone's a prophy. And I'm like, I'm preparing myself because I know one, I can't let that happen. I can't sleep at night letting that happen. But also, I am preparing myself to be asked to leave because it's happened so many times as a temp. They want you to come in, do what they consider to be your job, which is a prophy and a healthy patient, and leave because they're worried about their production. I get it. But that's where it starts, right? You don't trust me, or you don't trust me because you can't afford to trust me, which people don't like to admit that, but it is a very real thing. It's not that you don't trust me as a provider, it's you can't afford to lose the production in this hour to trust me, to let me create urgency around disease for you to make more money when the patient comes back, unfortunately. So I think in a temp capacity, that's one thing. It's trusting that provider that has gone through everything they needed to go through to become licensed within reason. Of course, at the end of the day, you're the practice owner, you're the one that's in charge, you're the one that's liable, so within reason. But if they're educated, they talk to patients well, and there's proof behind what they're doing, I think when you combat that, you make the hygienist one feel incompetent. The patient sees it, which is really bad, right? It's like, I may not be coming back, but you might have just lost a patient on top of that. And also letting them do that. In private practice, what I've seen is to the same tune, but on a larger capacity, right? It's like, this is your job. This is what's right. We're not having a discussion about it. I'm the I'm the owner dentist, or I'm the whatever hierarchy you want to say. That's it. It's not a conversation. And if there's any pushback with that or advocacy for themselves as a provider, they're either fired or they make their job a living hell every day when they come in. So I feel like it's another one of those things. It's like a lot of what we do comes down to work culture. My friend, that his job, is to go around and teach the psychology and the business languages of all these offices. He shared a statistic the other day, and I'm going to butcher this. I don't know exactly what it was, but something around like a person will leave over office culture versus money. So you could offer them a raise, and it's not necessarily that they're not staying because you did or didn't offer a raise. It's you offered a raise and they're still not going to stay because the office culture is terrible. They hate their life every day. I don't care how much you're paying, right? So it
I believe
all
that.
it all comes, yeah, right? It's like, no, I don't want to be here. I don't care how much money I'm making, It's you learn at a certain point in your career. I feel like, especially with us, we're dealing with patients on top of that. We don't need a toxic place to work at on top of patients not wanting to be there. But if we're not communicating and we're not trusting and we're not having conversations like these, just being honest and being human, it's not going to get any better. It's just not.
Hmm. Right. If someone's looking to, as if someone who's listening to this podcast who's a practice owner and is looking to hire, or maybe has somebody coming in as a temp,
Mhm.
what are some key things that you're looking for in an office when it comes to uh, personality, I guess, work culture, or and the scheduling?
Those are probably two of the biggest things outside of having instruments, that are, I would say, the biggest things. And when I say having instruments and laughing after it, is because I've walked in and there's a Montana Jack, a mirror, and a probe that's available, and I'm just like, I, oh, okay, we're doing this, okay.
You said instruments. You said instruments, and that didn't even cross my mind. Can you believe that?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, I walk in, I'm like, That's okay. This is what we do here. All right.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're not a hygienist that's well into your career and can afford to take the hit and leave financially, because remember, as a temp, we don't get paid if we don't stay. So not every hygienist, especially new in their career, is going to be like, I'm not doing this. This is unethical. They can't afford to say, I'm not doing this is unethical in that position, right? They have to make it work.
Hmm.
So
Right.
at a minimum, having the instruments that you need. But in terms of personality and schedule, I was literally just on the phone with a younger hygienist yesterday. She called me in tears because she walked into an office and they were just hateful to her. Just would not speak to her. If she asked for help, they rolled their eyes, huffed and puffed, like just treated her like she wasn't a human being, if anything. She was like, I can't do this. I don't know how you've been doing this for 7 years, especially as a temp. She's like, I want to quit. I want to quit the whole profession as a whole. And it's not the first time that it's happened to her, right? So it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back that day. And I told her, I said, you're new in your career. So you're already going into this with an insecure mindset. So anything they do on top of that is just going to add injury to insult. So,
Hmm.
in these scenarios, if you cannot financially afford to leave so that you don't have to put up with this, because it's not you that's going to get hurt, is what I told her. They're shooting themselves in the foot because there is such a dire need for hygienists right now, that if you have a hygienist that's actually showing up when so many hygienists left and you're treating them that way, what are you thinking? Because now you just lost the person that's going to come help you. They're never going to come back, and they don't have to because the shortage is so bad. And now your office is going to struggle because of your ego or whatever is causing you to act that way towards another human being. So I told her, I said, if you're not in a position where you can financially just walk away, you don't have to deal with this. You can find another shift within a couple of hours, probably. Let it roll off your back like a duck. Let the water roll off your back like a duck. Go in, do your job, see your patients, advocate for your patients as much as you can. If you're asked to leave, leave. Don't say anything, just leave and be done with it. So there's those scenarios where it's awful that that's what anyone has to deal with. But when we're showing up and we're there to help you, at a minimum, treat us with respect or just make us feel welcome, right? It's like, it's such a hard job. You could be walking into a ticking time bomb. So, in terms of personality or culture, just be nice. Just make sure that they have what they need. Don't micromanage them. They're likely never going to be in there again. Make sure that they have what they need. Make sure they're being professional. Of course, it is your office at the end of the day. I get it. But just let everybody do their jobs and go home. Like it doesn't have to be that hard, and we're making it very, very hard. In terms of the schedule, I think it depends on the hygienist, and that conversation needs to be had before the hygienist shows up. Because, and there's one other element, and I will talk about pay because I have not been paid before several times. So, um, the other element with the schedule is walking in and there's double hygiene and it has not been discussed. That hygienist, if they're experienced and they can afford it, they're walking out immediately. And the only reason I do or don't walk out is because of pay. My pay changes if I'm seeing double the amount of patients. I'm not going to walk out because I've been doing double hygiene for a very long time. But if I'm not making what I'm supposed to be making and you won't agree to it and you kind of did it behind my back sort of thing, I'm going to leave. But if it's a newer hygienist that just can't do it, like they don't have the experience, they're either going to leave or your whole day is going to be chaos. So making sure the schedule is okay with the hygienist is going to make both of your lives that much easier so that in the morning when everybody shows up, it's not like, what is this? Type of situation. Uh, and then with pay, I mean, it sounds terrible, but it's either been I'm going to W-2 you, you'll get your check at the end of the month because we get paid once a month. I'm like, do you know how volatile my pay would be if I let every office pay me whenever they want because it works for their
Right.
payroll schedule? Like, think about that. Think about that. Like,
Yeah.
they don't think about it. They're like, it's a paycheck. I'm like, for you. For a temp
Right. Like,
hygienist, we don't get paid, like we don't know when we're going to get
yeah.
paid. So that's not okay, like some hygienists won't say anything though. They just want to get paid, right? So they accept it. And then the next temp that comes in, that's not like, this is not okay. I do this full time. Now it's a problem. So I tell hygienists it's their responsibility to have that conversation beforehand. Hey, this is how I get paid. I work under my own LLC because I'm a speaker and because I'm a travel hygienist full time. So I need to be able to get those write offs and those benefits of the huge responsibility that I'm taking under financially, right? If their schedule falls apart, they don't have to pay me. So that's how, you're able to go under the LLC. If they want to agree to a daily rate, and even if the schedule falls apart, this is what I'll pay you, then they can make you a W-2. But if they're not willing to do that, they don't have to do that. But ultimately, the hygienist needs to have that conversation before for, again, that office culture and the environment the next morning. So we're not walking in or at the end of the day because you forgot to ask, there's no check.
Right.
And now you're sitting there like, how am I going to pay X, Y, and Z? I was expecting a $400 or $500 check today.
Right.
So,
Lauren, I'm telling you, new dentists experience the same thing. When you go in
yeah,
for a working
I've
interview,
heard.
it's the same issue. Like, you're new, you're young, you want the job, you're desperate for a job, you want to be on your best behavior, you don't want to be um, annoying or, seem like you might be a problem person. So you stay quiet, you show up, you do the work, and then like when does the check come in, right? So we share the same experiences. Like it's
Yep.
very similar.
Yep.
Unfortunately, like it's unfortunately it doesn't I don't think it's just dentistry. I think it's just the world in general that this is how people are, this is how business is, and people take
Hmm.
advantage of each other. And it's really up to you as a person to kind of realize like you're providing value, you're providing a service, this is your
Hmm.
time, and you should be compensated for it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. 100%. I think that we have so much more in common than we talk about. It's not that we don't know about, I don't think. I think it's we just don't talk about it. And like you said, it's like in life and with humans in general, we're not talking about everything that we have going on and how quickly if we just let everything down and took away all the barriers and just said, "Oh my God, I'm doing this and I'm dealing with this," and giving the other person the opportunity to say, "Oh my God, me too, isn't it freaking terrible?" And they're like, "Wait,
Right.
what? I'm not the only one
Yeah.
going through this." It's like, no.
Yeah.
But we're scared. So I think just trying to, keep having conversations like this and just be vulnerable and be like, look, this sucks. And I want to
Yeah.
work and I want to be here, but I can't do it like this. Like there's got to be another way.
Mhm. You mentioned a shortage of dental hygienists, and I also noticed dental assistants. Do you know why this shortage has happened? I mean, I don't really know where it's coming from, but do you have any idea of why it's going down this way?
I continued to work through COVID. Like when we were forced to shut down, of course, I couldn't work. But I was in Denver at the time when all of this was going on. And I was with an agency then. I wasn't solely independent like I have been the last few years. And my phone was blowing up. And I was like, what is
Mhm.
going on? Like, we're usually busy, but not like that. And they were like, we have no one. No one wants to go work right now. They said they're either terrified they're going to get sick, they can't wear the PPE, which I was one of those people. I swear to God, going through menopause at 32. So I don't need any help running hot. And so when they started saying we were going to wear all this stuff, I was like, oh, I'm out. Like, I'm going to have to find another job. Like I was like,
I
I
hear
can't,
you.
I can't do this. So I think it's a mix of a few things. I think that a lot of people got scared
Mhm.
and they got scared about, I can't work like this. I don't want to get sick, or the financial aspect of it. We were supposed to be one of those professions that could never be asked not to go to work, and we were
Right.
for 8 weeks. That's scary if you went into the profession for the stability of this job's never going to go away because it's healthcare, right? But
Right.
like we said in the beginning of the conversation, the whole world separated the mouth from the rest of the body a long time ago, and even through a pandemic, apparently. So I honestly think it was the fear of getting sick or losing their job, being uncomfortable, or a mix of all of them. So they left
Mhm.
when they could. They didn't want to have to worry about it. They had a lot of time at home to go get other degrees, or the hygienist that went into the career for the money or
Right.
for the stability or because they thought it was easy, they were out because it was no
Mm.
longer easy. The money was gone, and now the job's even harder. What
Mm.
was that statistic? It said hygienists were the only ones in any profession that were at 100% risk of exposure, and
Wow.
that's terrifying when hearing that. Even myself, I was like, I mean, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, and we have universal precautions and have had them for decades, so I need to trust those. Otherwise, we need to change those. But it's still, in the back of your mind, am I making the right decision? Should I be like everybody else right now and go find a better job or a more stable, less, hazardous, whatever you want to call it, job? And
Right.
I think the ones that stayed are for all the other reasons. And unfortunately, the number of hygienists that left was significantly higher than the ones that stayed or pushed through it enough to stay.
Do you think this like shortage or is affecting the dynamic between dentists and hygienists or the relationship?
Yes, I do in several ways. I told a patient probably like 6 months or so ago, they were like, "Oh, you're not the hygienist that I normally see." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "And to be honest with you, I think that that's going to be the new normal." And they were like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Think of it like a travel nurse." I said, our industry and dentistry had to make a huge pivot if we wanted to stay afloat because we lost a lot of people. And the public doesn't understand, know, or realize that. And so I said, it's better, in my opinion, as a hygienist, if I can go work, make my own schedule every week, show up, do my job like I would everywhere else, but I don't have to worry about all the politics and all of the office drama and all of that stuff. I have a better work-life balance doing it this way. And unfortunately, but fortunately, the pandemic made that easy for hygienists. So a lot of us are going that route now, and patients are starting to notice. And I said to the patient, though, to give them more security or feel safer with me, I said, but think about it. Just because a hygienist is in a different office every day and they're a quote unquote travel hygienist does not mean that they are worse at their job than others. If anything, it means that they are more qualified for the job because we have to be able to walk into any environment with any type of culture, any type of instruments, any type of patient population, and work through the day as if we're their permanent employee and nobody bats an eye. That takes a lot of skill over time. So if something is random that pops up, the travel hygienist is probably going to be the one to be able to help you the fastest because they've probably seen it somewhere else. So once I said that to her, she's like, "Oh, that's great." And I was like, "Yeah, like it's great for everybody."
Right.
But it's one of those things. It's live Darwinism happening right in front of us. It's survival of the fittest. Dentistry had to survive, right? So I
Right.
don't think it's anything bad. I think that our industry is trying to evolve, and a lot of us
Mhm.
are fighting it instead of just pivoting.
Right. Right. Um, you make absolute sense. And before, I want to ask you one more thing before we
Yeah.
go. My next question to you, and my last question to you is, what are some personal and professional um, areas of development that dentists should focus on in order to improve the team dynamic?
I think being a leader, right? I feel like, from what I've heard at least, most of my friends that are dentists, they talk about how they're not taught business and they're not taught like culture or leadership really or anything like that. It's very textbook, it's very clinical, it's very, patient focused, and that's great.
Mhm.
But then you come out into the real world, right? And you have to be a human with other humans. And if you're not taught how to do that with a brand new profession, you're a fish out of water.
Right.
And I think there's the mindset of what a leader actually is, which is what you're considered to be in the practice, right? In terms of the food chain, you're at the top. It's not, making orders and bossing people around and saying, it's my way or the highway. It's okay, what works for you? Are you happy? Do you like coming to work every day? Do you like working with me? And creating that opportunity for the rest of your team to be like, not on Tuesdays. I don't know what you do on Monday nights, but you come in here Tuesday and you're mad at everybody. And I don't know what it is. Like I think just creating better environments to where you can actually connect on a human level with the rest of your team. And it's not your fault, right? If you're not taught this, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how to be a leader in a new profession if nobody teaches you this or if you haven't experienced it before. So maybe taking courses, listening to podcasts, educating ourselves on how can I be a better leader, but also in terms of the hygienist dentist relationship specifically, trusting the hygienist you hire and letting them do the job that they were trained to do, just like you were trained to do your job. It's just going to be so much more cohesive. The patients will be better for it, and you'll both be happier for it, giving them the autonomy, respect, and giving them a piece of what they're working for, right? Hygienists are providers. They are bringing in money if they are taking care of their patients. If they're not, maybe we need to go take some CE courses. maybe you don't feel comfortable talking about treatment to your patients. It's not that you don't want to take care of them. You're terrified of having the conversations. That's okay. Somebody's got to teach you that. We weren't taught that in school. So,
Right.
getting down to the human level of everything, give everybody the benefit of the doubt, create that open and safe and accepting workspace, but giving credit where it's due.
Loren, you've provided some amazing insight, and I really enjoyed this conversation with you. Before I let you go, is there anything else that we want to touch on, or something that we missed that you want to just highlight?
I don't think so. No, I think everything was pretty well talked about. You create a very, very open platform. I run off the handles if you let me. So, but I think
No,
it
it
was
was great.
great.
I think so too. I think we had a great conversation, and I think people
Yeah.
would really um, enjoy listening to this. I think it'll be different
Hmm.
because they're not really used to hearing, the perspective of another team member, and I think it's a good wake up call for providers, and honestly, a good tool for new providers in
Hmm.
order to build those kind of skill sets and build that kind of conversation in their new offices. So,
Yeah.
thank you, Loren. And before I let you go, can you share your social media platforms or maybe where people can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So most people reach out to me through Instagram. It's my handle is Lauren, the coach for humans. The explanation behind that is I'm also a what's called the human experience coach. I'm a life coach for anyone. It's in and outside of dentistry. But you spell my name Loren. So that's the fastest way to reach me and the one that's the most used. If you prefer email, my dental email is Loren King RDH at outlook.com. And again, that is Loren.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow our podcast, write a review, leave a comment. Anything you share with us goes a long way. And if you think a friend will appreciate this podcast, then make sure you share it with them too. Until next time, cheers.